to Manalizing. In this episode, I'm interviewing Howard Little. He's a good friend of a good friend of mine. So Howard came over, and he did that at some cost to himself physically, and he gave. Nobody knows pain and difficulty and physical issues and the emotional issues that come with them and the fears. Nobody knows all of that more than Howard. Despite it all, Howard, who could choose to be bitter, who could choose to feel sorry for himself, who could choose to ask and allow others to feel sorry for him, he wants none of that. Here's a man who chooses, instead, to laugh. I admire that from him. He's not burying it, he's choosing it. Here's the interview.
I haven't talked like this about this ever. So.
Hey, welcome to Manalizing. This is where men talk about the kind of stuff that men don't talk about. Put your hard hat on, get ready for a ride. Here we go. Okay, let's do this. Welcome to Manalizing. Howard Little.
Well, thanks for having me.
Tell me about your life.
I developed prostate cancer. It was I wanted to increase my life insurance for my wife, and they said, "Don't go you have to get a physical." So I went and got a physical, and when we got to the prostate exam portion, which is never fun for any man.
Nope.
My doctor, all of a sudden, his whole demeanor changed. It was really kind of odd, and he said, "You need to go downstairs and take a blood draw and tell him it's for a PSA test." And I went, "Yeah, okay." I didn't think anything about it. Just went down because I'd done blood draws a lot. Because I did the Army Reserve too for 6 years as a broadcast journalist in New York and then in Utah in the middle of all this. And so I went down. Cell phones were just coming out.
Right.
And it rang and it said, "Please hold for the doctor." And that's never good when you hear that. Please hold for the doctor.
Right.
Christmas Eve day. And I thought, no, they're working today. And he gets in and he said, "I need you to go see a urologist tomorrow." And I go, "Tomorrow's Christmas." And he said, "Oh, okay, then the day after tomorrow." And I go, "What's a urologist?" Well, I'm thinking, what's wrong with my urine? That's what I was thinking. I hadn't even thought about a urologist,
Uh-huh.
I'm 47. He said, "It looks like you've got cancer, prostate cancer." And I went, "What? I'm 47. That's old man cancer. I'm 47. I was still playing competitive basketball at 47 years old."
Right.
And I'm like, okay, he set it all up. I went, get a biopsy, and it turned out that the biopsy, they called it a Gleason scale, and 1 being benign, and then it goes up to 10. And if it's 10, you better start digging a grave. Mine was 8.5
Oh, my
on the
goodness.
Gleason score. And so I'm immediately looking for options. My urologist told me there's different options you can take. And I was looking, and I was on the internet. And the odd thing about the internet thing is when you start looking for prostate stuff, all of a sudden you get a lot of porno coming at you. And I was like,
Really?
Great. Yeah, it's surprising. I was like, okay, get rid of that. Because I really didn't want the side effects that they were talking about, not being, this is the part, you get this, and the other options I was getting was saying that, I'm going to not be able to have sex anymore the rest of my life. I'm 47.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were telling me that, and I'm like, okay.
That alone is like, shoot me now.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm frantically looking for some better options.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going in to register when you go in the first time in the hospital. And I start to go up to the kiosk or whatever you call it, the desk to register at. And I stopped. I couldn't go. I started, all of a sudden it just hit me really hard. And thank goodness my wife was with me. She just took me by the arm and walked me up and helped me get registered to have it done. And she was with me the whole step. The funny thing is, this treatment is they take a big PCV pipe, that's what I call it. And
PVC pipe, yeah.
Yeah, they cut it in half. You lay in it. This is the procedure to get ready to go. They fill it with goop with your body, and then it solidifies so that every time you go in there, it's a mold to your body, and you just stay there so you can't move. Because if you move, you're going to get zapped in places you don't want to get zapped. And they do a mold of your prostate, and so it takes a little while just to get all set up. And they had 3 chambers. They treat 250 guys their year. I was 18 years younger than the next guy getting treatment. So I was like, oh, yeah, this really is old man. To get treatment, a couple of funny little things. Well, one of the nurses that I never saw again, thank goodness, when I was checking in and going through this process, said, well, isn't it comforting to know what you're going to die of? And I went, no.
Yeah, that's probably not the right thing to say, whether you're a nurse or anybody else.
Well, I was like, okay. But then, so you go through this. My wife went through everything. They go, well, the wives aren't normally here. She goes, I'm with him wherever he goes. This is my wife.
You have the right woman.
I do. And, but I made a mistake here. Okay, now this is a man mistake.
Okay, man mistake coming up.
Within the process, I was talking to some other guy who was getting it on his brain. He had a brain tumor, and he was getting proton therapy on the brain tumor. And I said, yeah, I'm going. Catherine was right there, and I said, yeah, I'm doing proton therapy for my prostate. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. And she goes, you're the one going through this? And I went, oh crap. No, we're both going through this. She had to go through it as much as I had to go through it, and I kind of discounted her. And that was not the smartest thing that I did during this whole process. And because you find out that it's really hard on the caregiver as well.
Oh, yes.
So anyway, the first treatment, I'm lying there. You wear your gown, you're naked, and you wear your gown opposite, so it's open in front. Mm-hmm. Then you crawl inside your tube, and they give a little towel over your genitals. And the woman that was the technician there, things got all set up and lying there. My wife's there, and she's there. She reaches down, she takes off the towel, she grabs my penis, she points it in the direction she wants it to go, not saying a word, and then puts the towel back. I said, now you do that for yourself the rest of the time. And I was like, well, you could have just told me. And she goes, I find it's easier to do it that way because you remember it. And I go, oh yeah, my wife burst out laughing.
I'll remember that, yes.
Remember that. And I've had so we went through that process, and I swear by it. It gave me 6 years. They originally gave me 3 to 5 years to live, but this totally got rid of the cancer. And then I had to go in and get conventional radiation, and they call it the brotherhood of the balloon when you're getting the conventional radiation. This is the embarrassing part. Mm-hmm. For all men anywhere. Mm-hmm. They put a balloon in your rectum and they fill it with water to expand it, because they figure that the radiation will only get a smaller portion to attack your colon, because they don't want it to, because radiation travels. And I ended up getting it in my bladder, and that's caused problems to this day. But yeah, that's a lot of fun, getting 16 ounces of water in your colon. And then when they let it go, you feel like, oh man, everything's going to go. And one day during this process, like it's month long, you're in there with the same guys in this, you see every day going through the guys in front of you and the new guys coming behind you in your time frame. And there was this gentleman. We all came in sweats. Most everybody is in sweats or really casual wear. And this one gentleman always came impeccably dressed. I heard he was a chemist of some sort. And one day, all of a sudden, they stopped, and we had to go to another. They had 3 of them. We had to go to another bay to get serviced, and it took a lot longer because apparently when they took his balloon out, everything else did come out, and so they have to sanitize everything again, all up. And we all have this fear. Every day we had this fear that we're going to have this happen to us. And it just had to happen to this man who was impeccably dressed, always very meticulous about taking care of himself. Mm. We never saw him again. he changed his time so he wouldn't have the embarrassment of seeing us.
Well, that's rugged. So what I want to explore is the fears. So you mentioned that everybody felt but didn't likely express the fear that they were going to lose more than 16 ounces of water when that burst.
Yeah, nobody expressed it until it happened.
Uh-huh.
And when it finally happened, then we're all just sitting there going, man, I hope that doesn't happen to me. I just hope, I pray. I mean, you literally see us when we get done. When I first got there, I thought it was funny because it's a college teaching hospital. So you have all these college students.
Mm-hmm.
And you see these old guys we're walking back, and they're just leaving their open, and they're just walking with all their junk hanging out. And I go, man, I can't see how these guys can do that. And but when you get out, this is what really irritated all of us, is they put the bathroom like way down the hall from the tech room, from where you get radiated.
Right.
And so you had to run down, and you're squeezing tight to keep everything in there while you're trying to get there.
Mm.
So yeah, that was the biggest fear, and that's what they call it, the Brotherhood of the Balloon. And they did have I guess sessions to help you get through all that you're going through, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that you might lose your sexuality, you know, and but with proton therapy, I had no side effects. With radiation, I had a ton of side effects.
And it bought you quite a bit of time.
Bought me altogether. It bought me first 6 years, and then 2 more years, and then I had surgery, and that gave me another 2 years. And then I had to go on finally on the hormone therapy, which is the worst. That's what I was trying to avoid more than anything, is the hormone therapy. And
What are your fears associated with the hormone therapy?
my wife would leave me. One of the guys was talking. He said, "Yeah, my wife left me." She said, "I don't want a roommate. I want a husband." Side effects from that is it's chemical castration. That's the crudest way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
Chemically castrated.
Right.
You don't really, you lose a lot of desire to do things.
Mm-hmm.
You lose a lot of energy. You lose muscle mass because you don't have any testosterone in your system. You know, when I was an athlete my whole life, you know, and all of a sudden I can't do things that, I guess that happens to everybody when you get older. I'm older now, but when I was, younger and I was still playing competitive basketball, you could see things dropping off really fast. And you just lose your desire for a lot of things. You have to keep telling yourself to go. I found myself just literally just stopping, and I'll realize, why am I stopped? When I'm walking somewhere, and I just have to keep going.
You lose your desire to even keep walking.
Yeah.
I think that's profound, that your fear associated with losing the ability to have sex is that you're going to lose your wife. And it's also profound that it actually happened to somebody.
Right.
What were your fears? Let's go back to the day when you found out you had cancer. You probably had the thought of, I'm going to die, but that was probably not your only thought. What were your other fears? What was going through your head at that moment?
The most thing is I wouldn't see my children get married.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't be around to see grandchildren at 47, because we married late. I was 30 when we got married. She was 29.
Uh-huh.
I'm a second husband, and I was engaged. Basically, I'm a second. Yeah, she's a second wife to me somewhat. But so we were married late, and that was one of the big fears, that I wouldn't see my children grow up and get married and have children and see grandchildren. I wouldn't have that experience. And my family's very close. And when I first found out, I was heading up to my parents, and I didn't want to talk to my mom. My mom, she's incredible. We just had her 90th birthday, and we had over 250 people showed up for my mom's birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad he's the solid one. He's a very solid, very quiet man, but good man. He was in the bishopric for, 13 years of my life growing up from 3 different bishops. But one of the best men I ever knew, and a quiet man. And I said, "Hey, Dad, let's go for a walk." And I told my dad, I just need that reassurance from my dad that it was going to be okay. And of course, my mom comes in and says, "What's going on? Why aren't you telling me?" So we ended up telling my mother too.
That's one of my questions. Is when you had that moment of, oh my gosh, I've got cancer. Who did you talk to? So first you talked to your dad.
Talked to my dad.
Then your mom pried it out of you.
Right.
At some point, everybody knew because probably your wife told everybody. But what happened next?
Well, we didn't tell them our kids because we didn't want to tell the kids at Christmas.
Right.
Because they were younger. The ironic thing is my daughter used my cancer and got a grant out of it. She's an amazing writer. She's a very smart child. But I didn't really want people to know. I really didn't.
And why is that?
Because I don't want people looking, oh, poor Howard. Oh, poor Howard. He's got cancer. Oh, poor Howard. Oh.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, and in my business, I really didn't want people to know. They got a cameraman with cancer. I didn't want people to know. And unfortunately, my mother told my siblings. And one of my siblings told my best friends that I grew up with. I'm still, like you are friends with Mark,
Mm-hmm.
and the guys that I played sports with all from junior high up through our high school years and then beyond in some capacities. She told them, and I'm like, oh, freak. I don't want these guys knowing I've got cancer. And they all, we all went to dinner. We always used to get together a couple times a year, and we still try to. Like I ride motorcycle, and I've got a couple of my friends still ride bikes, so we get together once in a while, take bike rides, motorcycle rides.
Mm-hmm.
And so we all got together, and then they, I'm still working, making money. We're doing okay, and they all chipped in to buy my meal, and I'm like, oh, freak.
Last thing you wanted is have your meal bought.
That's the thing, yeah. And I'm like, oh, crap. And so, yeah, and then.
So you.
So now I've been kind of vocal about it because if people know, then fine. I'm going to talk to them and talk to them about. Okay, I can either, okay, I'll be honest with you right now. I get down. I really get down sometimes, but.
Talk to me about describe one of those down moments for me. Where are you at? What are you feeling? What does it look like?
Well, the older I get, it's different because now I've got other issues that I'm dealing with. It gets to the point when you can't do things and that you want to do. And it's so frustrating. And you get feeling sorry for yourself. Oh, me, But then, and you do. You think, okay, if I died, I won't be a burden to my family, to my wife.
Right.
So do I time it out? And I didn't get to increase my life insurance. That was the biggest bummer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, we can't increase it. You have to keep the one you've got. And I was like, okay, great. It's not nearly enough that I wanted to have. So, okay, now this is a gospel thing, okay? I don't...
Go for it.
Gospel is... The church has become very important to me.
We're all about being authentic, so you be you.
There was a time when I was out of the church for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
And it was a road back well earned. And I've just had so many things happen to me that I can't deny it now, even though my daughter's left the church I belong to. So she... Just with the gospel in itself, where I have this mantra that, I have first world problems. My problems are first world.
Cancer is a first world problem.
Yeah, for me, for somebody who can't get treatment, it's a third world problem.
Uh-huh.
I've had the best treatment in the world. I get the best. It's kept me alive because the third treatment I got wasn't available when I first got it. But Loma Linda and proton therapy was. It's at the Huntsman now. And when it first came out, it was that. So I recommend anybody who has cancer and it's still contained, go get proton therapy.
Uh-huh.
Huntsman. If you're here in Utah, if you're California, go to Loma Linda. And it's in Indiana now. So anyway.
You mentioned that you get down.
Yeah, I get down.
Paint that picture for me.
Well, remember when I said I stop?
Uh-huh.
In those moments of stopping,
Okay.
I'm there, and all of a sudden I'll start thinking, oh, I've got all this stuff I've got to get done. I've got to do this. I got to, and you can't get yourself to do it. And I said, if I can't get, so you fight through that. And when you start feeling sorry, I start feeling sorry for myself. I remember that crap happens to everybody, and how you deal with it determines your character. And so that's what my mom would say to me as well. When I was younger and not doing things I was supposed to be doing, she would say, what kind of character do you really want to have, Howard? What do you want to be known for? And so that brings me out of it, out of that slump, out of that, okay, concentrating, okay, if I was to commit suicide, how would I do it? You know, I haven't really got to the point where I really want to do it or anything, but I've contemplated on how I would do it. And how I do is probably drive my motorcycle off a cliff. That's what I've decided. But because,
Yeah.
it's kind of cool.
That was my method. I was going to get a nice sports car, topless sports car, one that could really do those mountain curves.
Right. Yeah, and I didn't know it. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's and what do I want my family to remember me? How do they want me as a guy that just sat down and took it, or a guy that whined about it? Oh, I don't like whiners, and I've become a whiner in some point. I'll admit I've had all those down things where I've whined about it, I've cried about it, and my wife sees it, and she won't let me stay there either.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the character you describe. Do you want to be known for the sports car that you took off the edge of the cliff? You want to be known for resigning and melting into the couch until you're not breathing anymore? Is that the character you want to leave behind?
Right.
For the kids.
Then it just got worse after the cancer. I developed deep vein thrombosis in my left leg all the way from my crotch to my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
I was on a shoot and I was on a dolly trying to do this video, and they're moving me around. I couldn't even do that, and finally it said, you got to take me in. I thought I had bronchitis because my back was hurting, and I was coughing, and it turns out that I had deep vein thrombosis, and then in my lungs I had blood clots all throughout 4 quadrants of my lungs. And I remember, I'm a pretty chatty guy, and I remember when I went with the doctor, you got to get in and get an MRI done, and then ultrasound. And I was getting the MRI, and they wheeled me. I walked in, but they made me get in a wheelchair, and they wheeled me across the hall to get the ultrasound. And the technician, a young blonde, I'm talking to her, and I'm hearing this thing on my right leg going, your blood going, your blood, she's going down my leg with the ultrasound.
Mm-hmm.
She goes to my left leg, and there's nothing. And I get to my knee, and I go, I'm not hearing that whoosh, whoosh sound. That can't be good. And she starts to cry. This technician starts to cry. And she goes all the way to my ankle, and then she says, get up, you can get dressed and get in your wheelchair, and a doctor will come and see you. Wait out in the hall with your wife. She came in, and the doctor shows up, and just as he showed up, I get up, I'm thirsty. I walk over to get a drink, and he's looking at his chart, and he's looking at his iPad, and he says, I don't know how you're standing. He says, you've got blood clots all through your lungs, all through quadrants of your lungs. He said, we're taking you to the ICU right now. And I was like, freak. I thought I had bronchitis and so funky with my leg. That's all. And so they go in there, they give you the shot in the stomach, they do all this stuff. And Catherine's in the chair. It's late at night now. She's in the chair sleeping in there with me. And I'm lying there, and it's hard to sleep. And they're telling you, okay. And the new doctors come in about 5 o'clock, the new doctor and the nurse, and they're looking at the computer, they're talking, checking on the computer, and the nurse comes in. They think I'm asleep, and I'm just lying there watching them. And she says, is he going to make it? And I go, what do you mean am I going to make it? And she comes over and says, oh, yeah, it's going to be fine. And the doctor says, well, you made it through the night, so that's a good sign. And I had no clue I was that close to dying. He said, I found out later that most people who have had that die. Thing about it is, I had a blessing that night before a good friend came in and not Mark, another good friend had come in and gave me a blessing. Mark's given me a lot of blessings through the years, by the way. That man, yeah. So I kind of put that on that blessing because they were astounded that I was still alive in this ICU thing, and they couldn't. So anyway, we got that treated, and then I've had a second round of that just 2 years ago. And then I got the blessing from Mark 2 years ago. And then the worst of all that's happened because of the radiation and everything else. This is the most embarrassing part.
I'm good with embarrassing.
I got a UTI, urinary tract infection. I didn't even know guys could get them. And it was last October. Oh, I got COVID and I spent 2 days at the hospital doing that too. That was a fun 3 weeks of my life.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got this UTI in October and I still have it to this day. I've had 2 surgeries trying to correct it. I've gone through 5 different antibiotic things. They're trying to work with it, get it solved down, and it's partially related to all the treatment that's gone on with my prostate. What's happened is calcium is built up on the inside of my prostate. They can't clean it out. They get most of it, but they can't get all of it, and it's causing this urinary tract infection, which causes the pain and stuff that I can deal with medication. But then with the second surgery, when I got to go, I got to go. There's no, okay, you've got. Originally, this is how it was too when I first got my radiation treatment too. But I lived next to a bathroom. I had 10 seconds. Now, when you got to go, I had 2 seconds.
Oh,
so
man.
what do? You have to wear a Depends of some sort.
Uh-huh.
And in my line of work, I'm running a camera. Sometimes we have sessions 3-4 hours long. And I'm trying to preempt everywhere I go for the most part. I try to preempt this so I don't have to deal with it. But that's more than anything, more than the cancer, more than anything, that has got me down more than anything.
That is the one hardest thing that's happened to you.
Of all the things, it's not life-threatening, but it's
Took away your...
altering. And it's...
Do you feel like that's a big deal because it took away your man card?
It took a lot of my man card away, and and I'm in constant contact. And, they were hoping that the second surgery would alleviate most of it, but it just exacerbated it in some form. And they found out that I've got my cancer is spread now. It's in my rib cage, it's in my sternum, it's in my neck, it was in my coccyx and right hip, and my right hip was hurting so bad that we had 3 months ago, we did radiation on my hip and coccyx to alleviate that pain. And they put me on a new drug, which is basically the same thing. Cuts off all your testosterone, and they just did all the tests that they do on me, and I've lost 20% of my muscle mass and 10% of my bone mass. So I've had to tighten up my watch. Is that funny?
Wow.
Used to have 5. Now I'm on 3. It used to be 5. So anyway, that's the hardest thing for me to face, and the most embarrassing thing for me to face is that right now. And I have to keep thinking, okay,
This is still...
how am I going to deal with this? Do
Yeah.
I quit work? And I don't want to do that.
That's... so here's an impossible question. And a standard one for me. I go hunting for the lowest point in your life. And I think you've already told me what that was. And then the next question is, how did that serve you? How did that benefit you?
Okay, I lied to you. Well, that's not the lowest point.
Okay.
I didn't lie to you. I just didn't tell you the lowest point. And
Right.
Not many people know this, so I'm like, okay. When I said I was out of the church for 10 years, I got kicked out there. I was excommunicated.
Uh-huh.
And that was the lowest point of my life, by far, because I was on my mission
Okay.
and got excommunicated. And so it was hard on my parents, hard on my family. do you know how hard it is to date LDS girls if they find out you're excommunicated? I remember they knew it was happening, and they actually, when I was flying back from Scotland, my mother's from Scotland, and so that's why they sent me. But they did something that I had an escort the whole way.
Mm-hmm.
To make sure I got on the plane, that I seated on the plane. There was somebody waiting for me when I got off in New York. And they put me in a waiting room to make sure that I, didn't go off and try to kill myself or something. As I remember looking out the window in New York. This is, I'm 21 years old.
Right.
And I'm looking out the window of New York, never been there. I'm thinking, wouldn't it be better for me just to get out and not face this, not go home and face this, just get out,
get lost.
Get lost in New York.
Right.
And because I ditched my handler,
Uh-huh.
so I could have done it, but then something told me that'd be the coward's way out. And that'd be the coward's way out. And the only way that I really survived this is my mom she was very angry with me. She was embarrassed, totally embarrassed my mother to death. My dad's in the bishopric still, or he might have been in the high council by then. And here their son is, the only son that went on a mission. There's 4 of us, and I'm the only one that went.
Uh-huh.
And then this is what happened. And my dad, he was, when he got home, he took me again for I took him for a walk when I got the cancer, and then he took me for a walk when we got home. I mean, my whole family showed up when I got on the plane. They were all very supportive of me. My mother was angry with me, but they showed up at the airport to pick me up. There's all 5 of my siblings. And he took me for a walk, and he said, Howard, I've been praying for you, and I you more than all my sons. He said, okay, brothers, if you're listening to this,
Uh-huh.
he said, I know you're going to be all right. And I was like, what? All my other brothers are stalwart, amazing guys, and here I am. And he said, you're going to be all right. I'm not worrying about you one day. Not one day am I worrying about you. And
That's the right words.
yeah, and I think about that. And it still took me 10 years to crawl back in. I studied world religions to see maybe should I go to, but no.
So how did that moment serve you?
It made me non-suicidal. That
Okay.
was my lowest point. When I was thinking, okay, I'd rather die than do this to my family. Then I kept thinking, well, I've already done it to my family. Dying's just going to make it worse. And my dad telling me they're going to be okay. My dad had that much confidence, I like to say faith in me, that he had that much, made me want to live up to it.
I'm glad you had your dad.
Yeah, I like I say, I have an amazing dad. I was lucky to have, I was blessed. And I'm blessed to have the mom I have too. I love her.
Right.
But my dad, I am blessed to have the father I had.
Had you not had your dad and your mom, who would you have gone to?
The only ones I can think of are my friends, and they were very supportive.
Would you have gone to your friends for this?
They were all on missions. They were all out there on their mission still.
Uh-huh.
I did go to a guy who, we were never friends before. He's a year older.
Uh-huh.
And, but we started, he'd come back from his mission, and so he was there in the ward. He's closest to my age. I was the only one my age in my ward that went on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And my particular age group.
Right.
There were 5 of us, and I was the only one that went. And they had stopped going to church when I came back. They were gone. So there was just Brad. I could say his name, Brad. He was there, and I actually paid him back for being my friend, I guess, and sticking with me by introducing him to his wife.
Nice. That's a good payback.
Yeah.
So,
I wouldn't have gone to my bishop. I'm sorry, I wouldn't have.
yeah.
The bishop at that time. He was, I mean, I had to go in and interview with him, but in some form or other. But I didn't say a word to him that in any form, so.
So, true to the narrative for any man, I think you're lucky you had your dad. Take that away. I didn't have that relationship with my dad.
I'm sorry.
I think that there came a time when he recognized he had no relationship with me. His only role in the family was to be the executioner.
Oh.
And I've told this on this podcast a number of times, but really, while I was in the house, his only role, he recognized that he had no relationship, so he got football tickets, BYU football tickets, and took me to those. But as far as talking about anything, the only conversations we had were how to get to the football stadium and how to get back.
Oh, wow.
Superficial. But that's the best he could do. I'm not blaming him. That was what he could do. That was the best he had, and he gave it to me, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're lucky you had your dad. If you didn't, I think you'd be more like the rest of us that had nobody and went to nobody and just suffered in your own juice.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't discuss things with Brad. He was just there as a friend. I didn't tell him how I felt. I didn't do any of that. I didn't want to share any of that. The most ironic thing is I had another friend who had come back from his mission, not a real friend, a guy I played football with.
Uh-huh.
And he was talking to me, and he was telling me about other guys that had the same experience that I had, I thought.
Uh-huh.
And he's saying, yeah, and I find out later he was talking about me. And I go, none of that happened to me. That wasn't me. And I go, is everybody thinking that's what I did? And he goes, well, that's what I heard. I go, no, that's not what happened. None of that happened to me. And he goes, well, what did happen? And, but that shocked me. That really shocked me. I had fathers that when we're in college that would actually come up to me and ask me not to date their daughters.
I'm going to go back to your lowest point medically.
Okay. It's about a month ago.
What did you learn and how did it serve you? Why is that a blessing for you?
Yeah, you're the only person that knows this. And my family knows a little bit. My mother knows a little bit. They don't know the extent. I don't want them to know the extent. Because now I've got all these things. I'm dealing with the cancer spreading. I'm dealing with my UTI. I still have to deal with blood clots. I take medication for that. And I guess what it is, it gives me empathy for other people who are in this situation. I've heard now that my sister's been dealing with it. I didn't know that. But now my brother told me, I'm sure she didn't want me to know, but he travels with him a little bit. My little brother travels with my sister because her husband and my little brother get along really well. And he found out that she's dealing with a UTI that just won't go away either. And then he just called me last week and he said, I'm starting to feel for you, Howard. I've got this UTI. And he said, it's the worst. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's not fun, is it? But mine is, they said it's going to be chronic now because of the damage that's been done to my prostate through all the treatments, and because it's got ridges on it, and so calcium's just going to keep building up there. So I'm like, yes, I'm excited about it. I just try to be honest with you, I get to the point where I could either cry or laugh, and I've decided to laugh. When it's really that bad, I'm telling you, I've had some moments where it was the absolute worst. And I thought, oh, you gotta be kidding. And instead of screaming and throwing something or whatever, I just started to laugh, and the laughing got me through it. And I said, "Wow, that's what I'm going to do from now on. When this happens, I'm going to if something gets to me so bad, I'm going to try to laugh through it." And the funny thing is, I saw that too on a stupid television show where all these bad things are happening to this guy. He's a bad guy, and the absolutely worst happened to him at the very end. And then he just started to laugh. He said, "What else can go wrong?" And that's where I'm at now. I go, "What else? What else can happen to me?" So I just now I laugh. I laugh when I can instead of cry. Oh, and this is another thing. I watched my dad die of prostate cancer.
Oh.
That was the hardest thing to go through. And I was so angry at him because he was 85, and he's always been strong. I mean, this guy got ran over. He'd get up and walk home. He got run over by a snowmobile, tipped over on ATV, and gets up and walks home. And I'm like, freak,
Man's invincible.
Yeah, he's a big, strong guy. He was never fat at all. He was built like you. And I got my other brothers are built like you too. I got the skinny mom thing, my 5-foot skinny mom. That was me. So, but he wouldn't. They put him on the hormone therapy. He took the one shot, and it causes anxiety too. It gives you a lot of anxiety. And I've always been a happy-go-lucky guy, and all of a sudden I got anxiety through this. When the anxiety hit him, he said, "I'll never go through that again." He didn't. He's such a stalwart, strong character. He didn't know how to handle anxiety, and so he wouldn't take it. And so he said, he said, 85. I've lived my life. I've been on 2 missions. I've got a wonderful family. I've done everything I wanted to do in life. So the anxiety. He just said no, and I was so angry at him that he decided to go away from me. That he left me, and. Yeah, that was pretty hard. But everybody goes through that with someone they love.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we none of us gets a free pass to through life. If you were talking to a younger version of you, and you can decide how much younger. Maybe it's yesterday. Maybe it's 40 years ago.
Okay.
What's your advice?
Well, it's kind of like what I've already said to you. One, determine who you really want to be. How you want, determine how you want to treat people. I used to have this mantra, I'm saying used to. As I said, hey, if I'm suffering, I want everybody around me suffering too. I want them to join in the suffering. And totally avoid that. Just realize that crap happens to everybody, and you just decide how you want to deal with it. Do you want to cry and whine and blame? Who am I supposed to blame on this? My ancestors, my DNA. Found out my blood clots probably come from, I have 2.4% Jewish in me. And apparently the Ashkenazi Jews are predominantly, that's a factor that they have. It's called factor 5. It gives you propensity for blood clots. My sister has it. My 2 sisters have it. I have it. Do I blame all those Jews? Come on. Or my cancer, they found out that it's unique. I didn't get it from my dad. I can't pass it on. I didn't inherit it. It's very unique. They've done all these tests on me. So I'm like, okay, do I blame God? And I go, no, I can't blame God because I chose to come here. In my belief system, I chose to come here knowing that stuff was going to happen.
Right.
That I was going to go through stuff like everybody goes through stuff. I see people and I go, how come nothing happened to them? You see these rich guys and you go, man, they've got it made. Then nothing ever happens to them. You find out later, yeah, stuff happens. You don't think things are happening, but yeah, there's nobody to blame. It's just being here, being a human. And so be the kind of human you really want to be, the kind of person you want people to remember you by.